There we go. Okay, Shovavim, the rebirth of culture. So we are not doing Parshat Va'era by itself. We're really looking at Shovavim. Shovavim is helping you guys be very yeshivish. Shovavim stands for the following parshiot. Shemot, Va'era, Bo, Beshalach, Yitro, Mishpatim, which is the bets become vets, right? Shovavim. Okay, so that if you look at the Hebrew, it spells out Shovavim. This is a whole set of parshiot that take us all the way through Mishpatim. It takes us through all the parts of the book of Shemot, which have not yet touched the building of the tabernacle, right? After Mishpatim, you have Truma. Truma is the beginning of the building of the tabernacle. So in a way, you can think of this as all of the narrative of the Exodus and Revelation. So in Exodus and Revelation, as a package, is Shovavim. Okay? So we're going to look at that. And really the subtitle that I used is the rebirth of culture, because that is what is, I believe, is happening in these parshiot. That we are really, this is the Torah advancing the fact that you have Jews who have been in the, or I should say, children of Israel. Jews is a misnomer. The children of Israel have been in the land of Egypt for 210 years or so, and they obviously have absorbed a lot of Egyptian culture, and we have to rebirth that culture. So the first and perhaps the most prominent rebirth of that cultural scene is the mitzvah of the new month. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe ve'el Aaron be'eretz Mitzrayim. The reason the words be'eretz Mitzrayim, in the land of Egypt, are in black is because this is the only mitzvah in the entire Torah where it specifically tells us that it was given in the land of Egypt, right? There are plenty of mitzvot that says, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe lemor, and God spoke to Moses saying, you should say this to the children of Israel, right? Tzitzit is a good example, but there are many. But this is the only one where it says Be'eretz Mitzrayim, in the land of Egypt, right? So that is significant, because this is an anti-Egyptian mitzvah, or maybe a pro-Israelite, but those two are going to stand in opposition. And it is HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim. This month should be for you the first of months. Rishon Hu L'Chodshei HaShana, the first of the months of the year. That's the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh, but really more broadly, it's the mitzvah of a Jewish calendar. Now, this is, by the way, a very important idea. This is time reimagined. And it's very important because the Egyptian culture is a culture of the sun. And they use a pure solar calendar. The Egyptian calendar is very interesting. The Egyptian calendar is 12 30-day months and 5 days of Rosh Hashanah. A 5-day New Year festival and 12 30-day months. That's how they get to 365 days. They knew quite well that the calendar was a lunar it was a solar calendar. They knew how long the solar year was. And what is interesting is that the Hebrew calendar is going to break significantly from that. And we're going to look about that a little bit. So this is, again, the Egyptian calendar. It's 12 months, each of 30 days, and 5 independent holiday days, right? That's 360 and 5, so that's 365 days. Obviously, by the way, it is a sun-centric culture. The most important god in the Egyptian pantheon is, anybody know? Amun-Ra, right? The sun god. So there you have it. It is a sun culture. Now, let's go to the Jewish calendar. You should be confused by all the numbers on this page. And even so, it's a little bit not so accurate. I'll tell you why. Okay, so the Hebrew month, it says the mitzvah is you should have it says every month, this month should be the first of all months. And so the Jews are going to set their own calendar. Now, the solar calendar, Rabbi Yoel Ben Nun, who has some very interesting things to say about the calendar, he says that the Egyptian year is almost static. I looked at the weather patterns in Egypt, and it's not entirely static, but it's going to go between 17 and 25. It's like if you look at Cairo, there's relatively static times. You don't get a lot of fluctuation. For Vancouverites, it's a little bit like Hawaii, right? Have you ever noticed that Hawaii doesn't really have seasons? It's just right. So it's a little bit like Hawaii. It's very static. But the idea of a lunar calendar is embedded dynamism, right? That this is going to be a changing, dynamic, interactive calendar. And so it's going to represent a very different kind of thing. The Egyptian calendar was all about sort of stability, monarchy. Time there are almost no seasons. It is all stability. The Torah calendar is 29.5. The lunar cycle is 29 and a half days long. And by the way, the other thing it's interesting about a lunar calendar is pretty much anybody can follow a lunar calendar and know when a new month is. I mean, you might be off by a day or two, but really it's pretty easy. You see when the new moon is. And it's when the light part of the moon is on the right-hand side, right? The light is facing to the right at the new moon. It's facing to the left at the old moon. So it's easy to confuse them because they're only days apart, but the light's going to be facing on the right. So 29 and a half day cycle, 354 days is what a 12-month year is. So you lose 11 days to the solar year. Now, all the math on the bottom is the Hebrew calendar and the solar calendar, they will align every 19 years. And so 19 times 365.25 is 6,939 days and 3/4 of a day. That's what 19 years is. Now, how do you know how do you build the Hebrew calendar? That's that complicated math in the bottom. So you have 12 normal years of 29 and a half day months. And that gives you 4,248 days. But then you have 7 leap years in the 19 years. That's when you have the 2 Adars, yes. And so that comes out to, if you add the 2 together, you get 6932 and a half. Now you'll notice it's off by 6 days, right? Rabbi, what's going on? Well, turns out that there are a couple different rules that you have in the lunar calendar. There's one rule, for example, is lo adu rosh. Rosh Hashanah never falls on a Saturday night, and it never falls on a Friday. Because if it did, Yom Kippur would be on a Saturday night, Sunday. And we can't not cook before Yom Kippur. Agreed? I thought I'd get more agreement on that one, but okay.
Many more people will fast.
What's that?
Many more people will fast.
That's or many less.
Or many less, yeah, you're right.
No. It's the first day. So the first day of Rosh Hashanah, if it's a Friday Shabbos, it can be a Shabbos Sunday Rosh Hashanah. That you've had. But you don't have Friday Shabbos Rosh Hashanah. So that's just one of the rules that you have. So that sometimes you add.
Shabbos, right?
Yes. Yes. Many of those, right? But that doesn't start on the 6th day. That starts on the 7th day. Okay, this is just a lunar calendar. It's much more complicated, but this was very important.
And Yom Kippur it's never on a Friday, right? Like it's been on Shabbos.
Yom Kippur, right? That's Lo Adu Rosh. So yes, the Daled is Wednesday. It never starts. Rosh Hashanah never starts on a Wednesday, so that you don't have Yom Kippur on a Friday. Okay, so good, right? So those are the reasons you end up with 355 days, 356 days. So we work out the number of days. Okay, good. Now, actually, I want to do this slide later. Okay.
And did Hashem know that we were going to be doing all this cooking when they were in Egypt?
Yes, 100%. 100%. Now, here you have time reimagined, that and it's reimagined in a particular geography. The argument here is that the Torah is we have to just first of all appreciate the following, actually. Let me I always I do these out of order because I sort of build them in my head. But I want to explain something here. The Torah is trying, you have a bunch of slaves. They have been living in a culture for a very long time, right? What day is today, by the way?
What day is today?
What day of the week?
Okay.
Monday.
Right. So nobody here said today is Yom Sheni, right?
לא מדברים עברית פה.
If today were the 18th, what day would we say it is? It's a tough coin toss whether we said it was Shabbos or Saturday, right? You could
Administration will offer that it's positive, but it's entertainment, non-stop.
Okay, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. You're stuck in a
I know
culture.
you guys don't like it, but at the very least, it'll be very entertaining.
Okay. Okay, so I'm just making sure that those who are talking want to be so, and so just if you have a comment or a question, please don't hesitate to unmute yourself and just speak out. Okay, now here's the thing: we get stuck in linguistic problems, and if you stubbed your toe, right? I doubt anybody here would say "klape laya," right? That's a Talmudic phrase for those kinds of things. You stubbed your toe, you might say OMG, you might say JC, you might say OF, right? You could say lots of things you could say that we can't broadcast here. But what's that? You would not say Moses, right? Sweet Moses. Nobody says that, right? So, okay, we are culturally stuck. And it is interesting that, again, this is from Rabbi Yoel Binun. I never thought of it this way. I always thought that, look, it would be very ironic if we're going to give the mitzvah of Pesach, and we're going to say that the Pesach is going to be 3 days after Easter. Because we don't want to peg our holiday to some Goyish Azach, to some non-Jewish thing, right? But the Egyptian calendar has, I don't know where Pesach falls on their calendar, but let's just say it was Paopi, right? It was in the middle of the month of Paopi, the god of agriculture in the Nile. You don't want to define Pesach in the middle of some Egyptian god's month, right? Or let's just pretend Pesach falls. Actually, no, Pesach could fall in March, right? What does March come from? Remind me. If I say Pesach is on the 28th of March, what's March?
Mars,
right? I'm going to say
God.
Pesach is going to take place on the 28th day of the month of the Roman god of war. I mean, that just sounds so un-Jewish when you think about it, right? There's something there which is profoundly dissonant.
Do they know actually when the calendar started? When was the first counting? Do they know this there?
Counting of whose calendar?
Whatever, when the implementation of the lunar calendar, do they know exactly the date?
The Seder Olam Rabbah, which is a rabbinic text which tells us this. I don't know regrettably, I do not have at top of mind the exact Hebrew date, but the Seder Olam Rabbah would count that. It's a rabbinic text that does exactly those kinds of things. It calculates all of these.
No, what date it was? Did they start?
Oh, it's the 15th of Nisan.
So that.
No, the first of Nisan would have been their first
When
month.
was the first moon counted?
The first,
Yeah, so
it would be the first month, the first of Nisan.
that's when it started.
That's the Moshe got that mitzvah. This month, Nisan, will be the first of months for you. In the Torah, almost throughout, I'll tell you why it's almost throughout, the months always have numbers. And this is where Rav Yoel Binun says something very remarkable. He says that the Torah is insistent on numbers because it is aware that calendars drift into idolatry, right? January, Janus, the god of the gates. March, the god of war, right? May, the goddess of growing plants. June, the queen of gods, right? So all of these things have in the Persian calendar, Adar is the calamity of Marduk overcoming chaos. The Egyptian calendar has all of these gods in it. Calendars often have some theologic overtone, right? And the Hebrew calendar wanted to completely divorce itself from that kind of theology. And so you have numbers, not names. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Rabbi, Sue just said, when there's a leap year, we have a second Adar. She didn't say we have months 12 and 13.
Adar 1 and Adar 2.
Right. But if you had been a Jew living in the time of King Chizkiyahu or King David or King Solomon, it would have been month 12 and month 13. That's why they would.
Nisan's the first month. Why do we celebrate the New Year in Tishrei?
We'll get there. We'll get there. So but at least let's understand the issue. Now, what happened? What happened is the Jews went to Babylon and we picked up all these Mishagasic kind names, right? Where do we see these names? We see these names in books like Megillat Esther, when Jews live in Persia, Babylon, right? That's when we pick up these names. And the rabbi said, okay, by the time we started using those names, nobody's worshiping those gods anymore, so it's okay to use these other names. But the Torah is very clear that it uses numbers. Sorry.
Purim and Adar, it is an Adar.
Purim is an Adar. Now, okay, so also there is a sense that you have to calculate time, that as a slave, your time is set out for you. Time is maybe undifferentiated. You don't have Shabbat, you just have days running on end. The idea of a new moon is something which you are going to, you have to establish yourself. You have to be engaged in the time. You have to be dynamic with it. It forces you to contend with time as a dynamic force as opposed to a static force, which is a very sort of liberating idea. But here, the other piece of this is that the time is going to be reimagined as both a new concept, but also with a particular geography in mind. So this is in chapter 13. So the mitzvah of the new month is the first sentence of chapter 12. Chapters 12 and 13 are the mitzvot of the new the calendar and the Passover offering. So this is from the narrative or the instructions about the Passover offering. Hatema yotzim b'chodesh ha'aviv. You are now going out b'chodesh ha'aviv. So chodesh ha'aviv is interesting because it is a reference to both the lunar calendar, that's the chodesh part. Chodesh it comes from the Hebrew word chadash, means new. The solar calendar doesn't become new on a monthly basis. Only the only the lunar calendar does. The lunar calendar is about renewal. The solar calendar is about stasis. But Aviv recognizes that there is a seasonality, and that only Rav Bin Nun makes the argument that only happens in the land of Israel. There is no spring in Egypt, only in Israel. But the idea is that the holiday of Pesach is telling you that it happens in the month of the spring, and it is now about the idea that I'm bringing you to the land of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Emori, the Chivi, and the Yevusi. I am bringing you to the land of Israel. And here, this is the narrative. There are 5 times in the Torah it says, "Vigadat labincha," you should teach your son. So there are 3 of those times it talks about either saying a question or asking a question. Only once in chapter 13 does it talk about you shall tell your child. Now this becomes the she'eno yodea lishol. This becomes in our Haggadah, this is translated into the child who doesn't know how to ask a question, because this narrative doesn't have a question built into it. All the other presentations of this in the Torah have a question built in. So that's how you get 4 sons. 3 of them ask a question, 1 of them doesn't. Yoel bin Nun says, why do you have to tell your son on this day? He says, because you're going to be so busy planting your wheat and harvesting the first crop, you're not going to have time to sit around and pontificate, right? This is going to be the land of your dreams, but there's going to be work there. But in that work, and this is part of the interesting thing about the experiment of the land of Israel, we have been talking about all this time about shepherds and farmers and how the lands of the farmers are these workhorses. They lean towards autocracy, towards slave labor. And we saw that whole picture in Egypt about the 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine essentially turned Egypt into a farming slave collective. Egypt became one big plantation where the entire populace was enslaved to Pharaoh. Israel is going to try and deal with one problem. And frankly, it's a problem that we all deal with. And that is the curse of prosperity. How do you keep your kids sensitive? How do you keep the next generation understanding the real values when it comes to them too easily? That's going to be the big challenge of the land of Israel, because God is going to promise plenty, but demand sensitivity. Keeping those two things together, that's a very difficult thing. And so the Torah's answer to that is to remember your past, right? And so in the middle of this whole experiment where I'm going to make you into farmers, the Jews will become farmers in the land of Israel. They will not remain shepherds, but they need to have the heart of a shepherd. How do you have the heart of a shepherd? Well, because you have to have Chodesh Aviv. You have to have this dynamic moon, and you have to tell your children the story. So you're seeing the pieces of that culture, cultural aspect. I just want to, okay. I'm going to show you one other very interesting aspect of this idea, that the solar year and the lunar year twin together. The lunar year is our remembrance of our dynamic selves. That is the Jewish people who suffered through Egypt and renew, right? That is our collapse and renew. That's the moon. But we are also tied to the land of Israel. So Sue asks, why is Rosh Hashanah in the fall? Because Rosh Hashanah represents the end of the agricultural year and the beginning of the next year. Now this is the brilliant thing about Rabbi Yoel bin Nun. So if you take Rosh Hashanah and you count 354 days, you get to the next Rosh Hashanah. Your lunar year ends on Rosh Hashanah. Okay, it starts on Rosh Hashanah, ends on Rosh Hashanah. When does that same solar year end?
Oh, you said it was so many days short of the solar.
11. What's 11 days after
Like
Rosh Hashanah?
before.
Yes. Yom Kippur represents the end of the solar year after your lunar end. It's almost like we break the days of awe into 2 separate days. We have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, right? And it's as if we have there's a way of looking at saying there's really 2 calendars operating together. So you might say, okay, this is very nice, very interesting math, but I don't believe it. Okay, I'm going to take you to the Ark. Okay, the Ark. It says so you'll notice if you read closely on the numbers here, 710 is the second box. The top box is 814. 814 is chapter 8, verse 14. That's when they get out of the Ark, and that's in the second month, on the 27th day of the month. So that's when they get out. They get out the second month, 27th day. When did they get in? They went in on the second month, 17th day.
They're in for a year.
They're in for a solar year, plus a lunar year, plus a solar year. Because the way it's described months and days, which tells you that we're calculating it in lunar terms. We're expressing a solar year in lunar terms. That's how it goes for the Hebrew Bible. We are solar lunar people. The Muslims, pure lunar. The Egyptians, pure solar. We Jews, we're solar lunars, which is a cultural designation. We are dynamic like the moon. We have our own calendar, own special calendar. As Zev Shafran tells me all the time, the Jewish holidays are either early or late, but they're never on time. Right? That's what we are. And because we're both of these things, and this not only does this set a new cultural moment for Egypt, the Jews coming out of Egypt, it sets a separate time frame for every Jew for all time, right? There is, you know what? I'll tell you when a Jew feels his own time the most. I can tell you exactly which day of the year. I'm just wondering if anybody can guess the same day that I would. I'm going to say Shemini Atzeret. Imagine you work for Lehman Brothers, Allah Shalom. I work for JP Morgan Chase. And my first year, and I say to my boss, I need to take off Rosh Hashanah. Oh, Rosh Hashanah, good. You know, the Jews take off. The market's down that day. Yom Kippur, Yom Kippur. Sukkot, what's that about? Oh, that's when we build huts. Okay. Then you come in and you say, I have to take off Shmini Atzeret. What's Shmini Atzeret? Did you just make that up? That's when a Jew feels Jew time. That's when you know you live on a different calendar than everybody else.
Oh, they say the lunar calendar is the Talmud and the solar the written Torah.
Okay. All right. So that may well be, and there may be good reasons for that. But in this context, right, we're seeing the point that I want to make is we have a profound cultural shift that is going on. Now, my whole life, I never really understood this. And Rav Yobi has a beautiful book called, I think it's called Zachor V'Shamor. It's a whole sort of exploration of Jewish calendar and the uniqueness of Shabbat, but he goes through all the different aspects of the calendar. And I didn't realize this. Jewish time, Vayer Vayiboker. Most people, when is daybreak in English? Dawn, sunrise. When does the day begin? So I know our day midnight, but believe me, before we had to deal with clocks, days began when the sun rose.
Sunset.
Why are we weird? And our in
days
a way, we begin at moonrise. Maybe not moonrise, moon visibility. Vayi erev vayi boker. And it was night and it was day. That is very strange, right? Our clocks are different because at the base of everything, our clock is a moon clock. By the way, for those of you who have an Apple Watch, I just want to show the people here in the room. Maybe I'll show you on camera. My Apple Watch I have the Jewish face. And it tells me, first of all, tells me that it's Tevet 20. Kid you not. Gavi, you can see.
Get that. I can't get that on my Samsung watch. They're anti-Semitic.
It says Tevet 20 on it. It's got a little picture of the moon, and it scrolls through the different days. It also tells me, by the way, when the sun is going to rise. So I know, and it tells me when the sun's going to set. So I know when I have to get mincha in by. So the very Jewish watch face. Okay, so that's just saying, right? That's what we Jews, we run on a different calendar. We start at night, new days, all that. Anyway.
That's why you have this solar.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead, Shirley.
Holidays, 4 holidays are tied into the agricultural.
Correct. Yes.
So is that not going to?
No, you're correct. So well, this is from that verse, exactly the intent of this verse. Hayom atem yotzim b'chodesh ha'aviv. So the Pesach always has to be in the spring. That's what anchors us to an agricultural schedule, even though we may switch, as we may swing 25 days out in one direction or the other, depending on when we've had our last leap year. We could certainly swing easily 22 days because every year it's 11 days, but the reason there's a whole set, the Talmud has a whole set of rules about when it is that you have to add a leap year based on where the produce is, what's coming, and when how far you are from the equinox. There are a whole number of different criteria that they use in order to establish that. It was actually came up in the Daf Yomi cycle not long ago. Okay. All right. Now, this, I just want to be very clear, this does not appear in the text of the Torah. It appears in the Jerusalem Talmud as an interpretation of a particular verse. It says, Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Yitzchak, it quotes the verse, Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe ve'el Aaron vayitzaveim el bnei Israel. God spoke to Moses and Aaron and commanded them, or commanded them to the children of Israel, right? But it doesn't say what they commanded them. So the Jerusalem Talmud fills that in. Al matzivam, what was the commandment? Al parshat shiluach avadim, the idea of releasing your slaves. V'asya kahaida amar Rabbi Ila, and this is according to that which was said by Rabbi Ila, no lo nenshu Yisrael al parshat shiluach avadim, right? That which means that Israel was only punished about because of the chapter about the manumission of slaves. This is a reference to the taking of slaves in the book of Jeremiah, 34. I think 34th chapter of Jeremiah. The people started repossessing their slaves, and it's, so to speak, God said, "I didn't take you out of Egypt so you could have slaves again." But the idea here is the first two mitzvot that the Jewish people get is, by the way, I know you guys are all slaves now. Let me give you a mitzvah that is not going to make any sense to you, but you need to have it anyway. What's the mitzvah? You see this place that has lots of slaves in it, and they regularly take slaves? That's not how you're going to be. One day you're going to live, and there's not going to be any slavery in your lexicon, right? That's how that's going to be. So again, we have a sort of a cultural designation in the Exodus that this is not going to happen to us. Okay, now this is by the way, my AI generated image of the original Passover. I doubt it actually looked like that, because why would you have the wool on your lamb while you're roasting it? But again, the intelligence is artificial. So let's just let's call that it is. But I wanted a bit of a shocking image, because the idea, this is what the Egyptians were going to walk past as they walked past the Jewish homes, right? You see a lamb roasting a spit. And if you remember from last week, 2 weeks ago, Egyptians don't sit down to lamb meals, right? It's a toivah, it's an abomination, because they're farmers, and sheep and wheat don't mix well. Now, this picture, by the way, is we could look, if you're manipulating your culture and you really want them not to eat your lamb, you could call it a god. I don't think it had any mystical powers. They may have believed it did, but that was all propaganda. Right? They can manipulate their propaganda as they wish, right? So fine, Gavi, I'm happy to say that it was a deity, and we put the deity on a spit and started roasting it. It's all fine. No matter how you slice it, it is a cultural rejection, right? It would be a little bit like here, if for Hanukkah we decided that we're going to have a new ritual. We're going to get a big piñata, dress it like Santa Claus, and beat it to death, right? I mean, that wouldn't even that would not stir as much.
Right now, it wouldn't do anything.
Yeah, and it would be right.
No.
Okay, well, okay. Well, I know. You know what? Actually, but Gavi, here's, when Samidun became illegal, when they brought down Samidun here, when they burnt the Canadian flag at the art gallery and said, "We are Hamas."
No, and said, and death to Canada.
Okay, and death to Canada. So, if you want to know what it means to be cultural rejectionist, that's what it is, right?
They could burn all the Israeli flags they wanted, they wouldn't have done a thing.
Okay, but they're to be fair, just in our analogy, they're in Canada. So the sacred symbol in Canada is the maple leaf, right? And and so the idea of roasting the animal, is a rejection of Egypt. Now, here is an 18th century German, maybe Amsterdam Haggadah, where you see, again, a slightly tamer picture of the, no. But I want you to think about the symbols of your Seder that say, I am not an Egyptian farmer. Okay? First of all, we went over the roasting outside hole. Fine. You're putting the blood of the sacred animal on your doorpost, right? Just in case you're wondering which one of the neighbors did this thing, I just want you to go look on my doorpost. I've got the blood on the doorpost, right? And that's how you know you're going to be saved. God skips over the people who separate themselves from the Egyptian. This is my favorite one. The food of the farmer is forbidden. I know matzah is made out of wheat, but really, it's the bread which is the signature, right? Right? You're rejecting that big farm which is Egypt. And last but not least, right? Egypt doesn't welcome guests in a way. They take you in as slaves. So you may not believe me that matzah is the bread of guests, but matzah is what they call, if you look in your baking cookbook, there's something called quick breads, right? So quick breads, we make quick breads with baking soda, right? Right? Irish soda rolls, beer bread, right? But in the Middle East, a quick bread is something that you roll very thin. It's a lafa. A lafa is a quick bread.
Yeah, like the ones that puff up.
Yeah, exactly. So who serves quick breads to his guests and calls it matzah? First person to serve matzah in the whole Torah. No. I mean, maybe Abraham by the Midrash, but where does the word, if you search the Torah for the word matzah, where do you find it first? Lot serving the angels. And that's a proto-Pesach. There's a whole discussion on that, but manna's later. Manna comes later. We're here. This is we don't have manna when we get this instruction. Okay. Now, here we come to an even deeper theological level. This week's parsha begins with these words: Va'ira el Abraham, and I appeared to Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai. Shmi Hashem lo nadati lahem. But I did not make myself known to them by my name Hashem. The name Hashem, the Yud Hey Vav Hey, that root, it means existence, right? By the name of existence. The way in which the Kabbalists and interpreters of the Torah understand it is Elohim is, if you will, it's the God of physics. It's one way to describe it is justice, because the laws of physics are unforgiving, right? You could, you could miss the brakes and hit the accelerator, and the laws of physics will not give you a break when you hit the wall. Just what it is, right? It is mass, acceleration, and how flexible it is the thing that the stress level of that which you hit. But the name of Hashem is the name of God intervening in history. And so you get these two different names. The name of Hashem is going to be this name in which God is literally going to, it's also understood sometimes as Midat HaRachamim, the attribute of mercy. But mercy is, your mother intervenes and cancels your father's justice, right?
Well, Rabbi Berger in 2020 was explaining this thing, and he said that God has two parts to him. He has the Elohim, which is the justice part of God,
Right.
and then the Yud Hey Vav Hey, Hashem, is the one who brings mercy, and you can't be complete without both sides.
Yes. Don't disagree. So Sue is basically saying, repeating Rabbi Berger's 2020, that you have God as Rachamim, as mercy, and Elohim, which is din, justice, and you need to have a mixture of the two of them. And without the other, Without din, there is no continuity. Things are not solid, and without rachamim, you have pure evil. So we need both. But what God is saying here is, I am revealing myself as a God who intervenes in history. And here we go. Again, we're back to shepherds versus farmers. And so Egypt is the land of the farmers, and the Jews are the shepherds.
Moses went to become a shepherd, right?
Yes, not accidentally. I think that fits very well with that theme. When does Moses encounter the burning bush? As a shepherd. Exactly. The farmers versus shepherd piece is not should not be missed out with us. But wait, somebody had something in the chat. Okay, we'll get back to that later. These are the 10 plagues. Now, the 10 plagues are very interesting. You can plot in your Seder, in the Haggadah, it says, Rabbi Yehuda made of them simanim. He made signs of them. Ditzach, Adash, Be'achav. Right? Ditzach means Dam, Tzvardeya, Kinim. That's one unit. Right? Then the next unit would be 4, 5, 6. Achav, Arov, Arov, Kinim, Dever. No. Bara, sorry. Arov, Kinim, Bara. Right? So you go through the plagues, and he groups them in sets of 3. What are the sets of 3? The first set of each one comes with a warning. First one is always you meet Pharaoh by the river, and that would be in plague 1, 4, 7. The second plague is always Bo el Paro, go to Paro. So that's plague 2, 5, and 8, right? Now, what's interesting is you'll see in the column there, it says warning. So you'll see that in 3, 6, and 9, there's no warning, right? They just, boom, they come. And there's a whole interesting, different rabbis have different interpretations of why this is. I think it was Rabbi Yaakov Emden says there's a general idea in Torah, al pishnaim edim yakum davar. By two witnesses, a matter will be established. So you get 2 plagues with a warning, then you get your punishment, right? God testifies once, God testifies twice, right? Testifies with blood, testifies with frogs, and then you get lice is the next thing you get. Here it says gnats. So this is you can see that there's a pattern into this. By the way, you'll see there's also another, there are other functions in this. First of all, in the first 2 plagues, the Egyptian magicians are able to replicate the sign. And in the third one, they fail to, right? So you can see that the first set are, you think you have magic, you think we have magic, you think your magic is better than our magic. Well, guess what? I'm going to show you your magicians are no good, right? Each one of these, in a way, is a stage of undoing an Egyptian conception. Rav Yoel Ben Nun has a very interesting way of looking at this. These days, I'll learn how to use my computer. He's going to say that each one of these is going to represent a warning. So the warning for the plague of blood is actually the staff turning to a snake. What's the warning? The warning is, you think you have good magicians? Watch what happens when my magicians, when my power over nature encounters your magicians. Guess what? Right? Your magicians lose their staff. Right? That's the warning for the next 2 plagues. And then says Rav Yoel, oh, so what's the warning for the next three plagues for the warning of wild animal. I mean, it's confusing me because I pulled this chart off the internet and they call it gnats, but let's say lice. Kinim is the warning for Arov and Dever.
The
Right.
Dever cattle disease.
Yeah, so that says livestock here. Interesting. Arov, Rav Yoel Binun says his father has a tradition that Arov is are the birds of prey. Are not the birds of prey, they're crows. Right? Ravens, crows. So these are all things that are going to attack your food supply, right? They're gonna attack the animal food supply. And then boils has there's no warning for it, because that itself is the warning for hail and locusts. We are going to attack the very heart of Egypt. We are going to attack your wheat crop, right? And then darkness is the warning for Makat Bechorot. Because the plague of Makat Bechorot, Pharaoh doesn't know if he will be able to see the morning again. He may end up in darkness too. It's a very interesting way of understanding sort of the plagues. All of these, by the way, we think we sometimes are colored by the Midrash. The Midrash has its place. I'm not trying to undo the Midrash, but we think, I was raised with, at the plague of blood, a Jew was drinking out of his Slurpee cup with a straw and getting water, and the Egyptian was drinking out of the same cup with a straw and getting blood. That's my picture of blood in my mind, because that's what my teachers taught me. That is not what the Torah narrative says. It says that there was blood all over through Egypt. Everybody had blood. And frogs were everywhere. But as you'll see in the column, distinction for Israel, only when you get to the wild animals, Arov, whether it's flies, whether it's ravens, only then do you start to see a difference. And so only as we go later and later into the plagues, and even as you go later, it's not just the separation between God and Israel, it's between those who believe and don't. Because those who take their animals inside for the plague of cattle disease, they're going to be protected, but those who don't won't. Only those who put blood on their doorposts are protected. No, it says L'vnei Israel haya or b'moshvotam, and in the yes.
It's darkness, because we did that in grade 6. I went to in grade 6, we did darkness, and it was like
Can you hand me a chumash?
darkness was like, it was like something came on top of you. It was like darkness, right?
I
Like you're sitting under.
I like to think about the darkness as sort of some kind of extremely intense depression, right?
Well, we didn't explore that.
Because it says they didn't get out of their chairs for 3 days, right?
We didn't explore that count for our grade 6.
Right. So I just want to actually give you the actual verse.
Makes more sense now to me than an adult.
Yeah, okay. So it says as follows. This is verse 23. Lo ra'ish et achiv v'lo kamu ish mitachtav shloshet yamim. One man did not see his fellow, and a man did not get up from his seat 3 days. Ulchol v'nei Israel, and to all the children of Israel, haya or b'moshvotam, there was light in their dwelling places. So, well, so darkness is darkness, but darkness and not getting up out of your seat for 3 days is I wouldn't want to. I can't say I understand it fully, but I think there could be a psychological component that comes along with the darkness. Is all I'm saying, and I think there's some midrashim to that effect. But you see in this that the Egyptian magicians first can't do it, so it's a warning to the next plague that your magic is going to be gone, and you're going to see that your Egyptians cannot stand for the next plague, and then you're going to see that there's going to be a penetrating darkness, which is again people are not going to get up for 3 days. It's a warning to the fact that people are not going to get up at all. And last but not least, just to sort of tap out this full cultural rejection, that we're resetting a whole culture here. So when Pharaoh says to them, it says, "Vayomer aleihem yichen Hashem imachem." But he said to them, "Hashem be with you. Ashalech etchem." I meant to let you go, your dependents go. Ru'uki ra'a neged pnechem. So here's a play on words. Ra'a in Hebrew means evil. Evil is against you. But Ra is also Amun Ra. Yes, with an aleph it would be to see. But in this case, it's a play on the Egyptian word. Amun Ra stands against you. You guys can't win because Amun Ra is against you. But actually, this is the demonstration. Amun Ra, Shmamun Ra. Right? You think you haven't heard of our God. You think this God is meaningless. This is this concept of Shmi Hashem lo nodati lahem. This is God intervening in the world. Plagues don't happen like this. Splitting of the sea does not happen without God's intervention. And we see that the shepherds are taken out from the farmers. Now, this is to me the very interesting project of Torah at this point. Torah at this point is going to try and keep the soul of the shepherd while bringing the prosperity of the farmer. That is the end. That is the Torah's goal. Is we're going to give you the prosperity of the farmer and the soul of the shepherd. That's what's being done here. But this is a reboot of the entire cultural piece. That this parsha is about trying to create a completely separate. And I mean, the matzah thing also gets me. The food that this culture became famous for, right, in a way, is rejected. That and we, if there's any place where Jews find identity, it's on the dinner table.
They wandered in the desert for 40 years.
It says that exact verse says, "Ro'im, you shall be shepherds in the desert for 40 years."
And they counted because they had the new calendar to count by the right 40 years.
Yeah. Yes. A good point. Moses, can we make this a little easier by not putting in the leap years? Okay, Tov. All right. So Ad Khan on our first lesson.